populism, protests, and a new prime minister in Tunisia. He now has 30 days to form a government, otherwise millions could be heading back to the polls. So is his appointment the kickstart the nation needs, or just another false start? I'm Ali Aslan, and today's newsmaker is Hichem Mechichi. The Arab Spring was born in Tunisia, but almost 10 years after the revolution, the country is still plagued by social and political instability. Tunisia's former prime minister resigned less than 6 months into the job amid allegations of corruption, a claim protesters say is endemic in their government. It's something the new prime minister will have to tackle, along with a struggling economy, high unemployment, and a pandemic. But the former interior minister steps into the role with just a limited time to win over both parliament and a skeptical public. Natalie Pahonen has more.
Tunisia has its third prime minister in just 5 months. The interior minister, Hichem Mechichi, was appointed by the president on the weekend.
We are working to ensure that we form a government that meets the expectations of Tunisians and that will respond to the legitimate demands they have been waiting for all these years.
He takes over from the former premier, Elias Fakhfakh, who only took office in February after months of protracted negotiations to form government. Fakhfakh left the role after allegations of a conflict of interest, an accusation he denies. The 2019 elections delivered a parliament divided along ideological lines. The party with the largest number of seats, Ennahda, the self-styled Muslim Democrats, didn't secure enough spots to rule on its own. Mechichi is now on deadline. He has 1 month to form a government. If he fails, fresh elections will be held later this year. Strikes and protests are an established part of life in this young democracy. The calls for jobs and better wages for those who do have work ring loudly. Many Tunisians feel that successive governments in the post-Arab Spring era have failed to deliver on promises of a better economic future. The unemployment rate is hovering around 15%. But a joint UN and Tunisian government study predicts that figure could rise to 21.6% once the effect of the coronavirus pandemic is factored in. The unemployment crisis is particularly felt in regional areas like Tunisia's south. 32-year-old Khala Jadi says it's left people with few options.
All those between the ages of 12 and 30 only dream of leaving the country illegally. Even if they have a wife and children, that's all they think about. What do you want them to do? Some 30-year-olds don't even have enough money for a coffee. They still ask their mothers for pocket money.
That sense of despair is also directed towards politicians and government institutions. Even before the pandemic, the country was grappling with deep social and economic inequality. The situation has only become more acute. It means the Prime Minister will be tasked with not only handling a political crisis in Parliament, but also addressing a crisis of faith in politics itself. Natalie Pahonen, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Tunis to discuss this is Radwan Masmoudi. He's a member of the Ennahda party and the president of the Center for the Study of Islam and Democracy. Also in Tunis is Mohamed-Dhia Hammami. He's a Tunisian affairs analyst. And finally, we have Ahmed Amouri in Edmonton in Alberta. He's an independent political activist and a former member of the Tahrir Tunis party. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Good to have you. Radwan, if Hichem Mechichi is confirmed, he would be already the third prime minister in less than half a year. This doesn't bode well for your country. It seems to be that Tunisia cannot escape the never-ending cycle of being in a political crisis. What do you attribute this to?
an electoral law and a law on political parties that has weakened the political party structure in Tunisia. We have over 200 political parties, and 20 of them are in the parliament. Many of them have as few as 3 or 4 seats in parliament. So we have a fragmented parliament and a fragmented political party system where we have a lot of political parties, but none of them are strong enough to really have clear vision for the future, clear programs, or are ready to govern if and when they win elections. So I think the first thing that has to change as quickly as possible is we need a new law on political parties so that political parties are real and are strong, and also a new law on elections so that if you are going to become a member of parliament, you really represent at least 5% or 10% of the Tunisian people, not 0.5% or 1% only. So we need to consolidate the political life and the political party system in Tunisia. I think that is the biggest weakness in Tunisia.
Ahmed, I saw you shake his head while Radwan was speaking. Clearly, you don't agree with his assertions.
That's not the problem. I agree with him, but I just watched a few minutes ago, before being live on your show, Mr. Radwan Masmoudi speaking on June 17, 2013, and calling our constitution a miracle. And his party kept saying it's the best constitution in the world. So I don't know what's the problem here. This is quite contradictory. The problem is way deeper than what he said. Yes, there is a problem with the electoral system. There is a problem on the way Tunisians have been voting. The parliament is deeply fragmented, but this is just because of the constitution that Ennahda, that Radwan Masmoudi is part of, has created. Not only Ennahda, the Troika, but they created this system on purpose, so they stayed there forever because it's based on the divide and rule system. That's what I think.
Ahmed, if we look at the latest case or the latest prime minister who falls victim, if you will, I'm sorry, Mohamed, the question goes to you. Prime Minister Elias Fakhfa, he resigned now less than 6 months into the jobs over allegations of corruption. These are allegations brought forth by the Ennahda party. Are the allegations justified?
Yes, I think so. And actually what is surprising is why Ennahda didn't bring these allegations at the very beginning. In previous interviews, leaders of Ennahda alluded to the situation of conflict of interest before even giving the government of Elias Fakhfa the vote of confidence. So I think that despite the fact that these allegations are reliable and confirmed by several state institutions, from the executive, the judiciary, and the parliamentary commission that was created recently, the reason behind the tensions, the aggressive campaign towards now resigned Prime Minister Fakhfa are more deeper than the simple problem of conflict.
Radwan, if we're looking at the situation right now, Hichem Mechichi has to be confirmed by what you say is a fragmented and ideologically divided parliament. He only has 1 month to do so, otherwise we're going to face new elections. What scenario is most likely? Is he going to be confirmed, or do you foresee new elections for Tunisia? Radwan is gone, I'm hearing, at this particular point. So let me throw out the question then to Ahmed. What do you think, Ahmed?
I think that the standoff that has been opposing Qais Said to 3 parties mainly, like Ennahda, Etilaf al-Karama, and Qalb Tunis, Heart of Tunisia, is probably going to come to an end. Why? Because he's stepping in. He said, I'm the strong man of the country, and he's pushing them. He's pushing them to choose either the dissolution of the parliament, or and new elections, or sorry for the term, sucking it up and just accepting the new prime minister. So I think they're going to accept that, because let's face it, if we have new elections now, according to the last polls, PDL, the party of Abir Musa, is most likely going to be the first party in Tunisia, and that Ennahda will never allow that to happen. And it's left Karama too.
So if it's all, Radwan, you are back now. I was wondering whether you foresee a new election in Tunisia, or whether you think that Mechichi is going to be elected. After all, your party is still the largest party in parliament and yields enormous influence.
Yes, I think it depends on what kind of government Mechichi will form. If he forms a government that includes the major political parties in the government, and that's what Ennahda is calling for. It's calling for a national unity government that includes all the major political parties. And if Mechichi does that, then of course Ennahda will support this government and will become part of it. If Mechichi wants to create a technocratic government that has no ties and no relations with political parties or with the parliament, then I think Ennahda will not vote for it, or might vote for it, but the government will not last very long, because it will not have the support of the parliament, of the political parties in the parliament. Let's not forget, the parliament represents the will of the people, represents all the political parties in Tunisia. They are in the parliament, and there is and we have a parliamentarian system. And by the way, I did say in 2013 that we have one of the best constitutions in the world. This is not just my opinion. This is the opinion of all the constitutional experts in Tunisia and in the world. They all said we have a great constitution, and we still do. The problems that I alluded to, which are at the front of the current crisis, are the law on elections and the law on political parties. Neither of them are part of the constitution. They have nothing to do with the constitution. These are laws that were from 2011, so they predate the constitution, and they were written specifically for the constitutional assembly.
Well, clearly it's going to be, I think from everything you've set up until now, it's quite clear it's going to be quite challenging for Mechichi to form this government in 1 month's time. Mohamed, how do you think this is going to play out?
Today, almost all parties represented congratulated Mechichi for his nomination by Said, and very few of them are willing to go to new elections, including Ennahda. Surprisingly, the PDL, headed by Abir Musa, said that they are willing to vote for Mechichi if Ennahda is not in the government. So it is unclear. There is a possibility that Mechichi would be able to get enough votes and to get a vote of confidence without the vote of Ennahda. So we might see a new change in the political scene, with Ennahda being in the opposition and a parliament that does not include the party with the highest number of the parliament, and that would be challenging for the government to pass laws. More importantly, we will continue to see the internal lack of cohesion and coherence, especially ideological coherence, between those represented in the government of Mechichi.
Ahmed, regardless of how this is going to turn out, obviously there's never a good time for a political crisis, but perhaps none more inopportune than these days. The Tunisian economy is expected to shrink by 7% this year. We're seeing high unemployment, deep social and economic inequality, and on top of all of this, a pandemic to deal with. This unified government and a strong leadership and strong prime minister is needed more than ever. But it seems to me we're heading quite in the opposite direction.
it's gonna work like a Russian roulette, if I may use the word. So, Mechichi, the problem so far has been that we had, I think, 9 governments in 9 years, and it's always the same story. You have a deeply fragmented parliament divided by ideological rifts. But now, and this is the exception, now we have 2 heads of the executive power. We have the head, if he's elected prime minister, we have Mr. Mechichi and Kais Saied working closely hand in hand. I know things are very hard in Tunisia, extremely hard. Like only 19% of Tunisians still trust the economy. What's gonna happen in the next few days, like in the next month, is that I think Mechichi is gonna work closely with Kais Saied, but if he wants to succeed, he has to simply work on presenting his own projects, not based on what the parties want from him, what the Ennahda wants from him, or what Qalb Tunis want from him. He has to present his own project, so everyone will agree with him. I know not everyone, of course, but at least the PDL, Tahya Tunis, Harakat al-Shab, and so on and so forth.
And Radwan, Ahmed just said it, there's great displeasure and unsatisfaction amongst the Tunisian public. We're seeing regular protests over socioeconomic inequalities. And of course, many Tunisians are frustrated with the nation's politicians, saying they're more interested and concerned about staying in office rather than caring about the needs of their people. That's quite an accusation. What do you say to that?
Well, I first of all would like to say that we are still in a transition to a democracy. We are not really in a democracy yet. We are still building the institutions of democracy and the culture of democracy. And we still have weak political institutions, like I said earlier, weak political parties and weak parliament. And so therefore we are still, it's still work in progress. We are still fighting corruption. Corruption is not new by any standards. I mean, it existed before the revolution, and that's why we had the revolution. Unemployment also is not new in Tunisia. We had 15% unemployment before the revolution, and it continues after the revolution. So these are endemic problems in Tunisia that will require a national unity government. I think this is the only solution, is if all Tunisians and all political parties are united and form a united front and work together to solve all these problems, rather than appoint a technocratic prime minister or a technocratic government that lacks a vision and lacks national unity and national support. It will fall again, without a doubt, in few months if it does not have the support of the parliament.
Ahmed, we still haven't perfected the political system or even democracy, is Radwan seems to be suggesting. So 10 years, almost 10 years after the revolution, 10 years was not enough time?
That's, of course, it's not about the time. It's about what certain parties want from the whole system. I'll give you an example. The ANC, the African National Congress, in South Africa have been using the same arguments for the last, I don't know how many years. Oh, you're like trying to frighten people with what was happening before Nelson Mandela took power. It's the same thing. Oh, remember how bad it was before. Okay, but you had your chance. You're in a pottery barn, like the American saying goes, and there is a rule. You break it, you own it. You did this, and Ennahda did this. The Troika did this.
Oh, this is wrong. That's not true.
No,
wait.
You did this. No, you did this. That's why people are voting for people like Ahmed Amouri.
This is really funny for somebody coming from Tahya Tunis and from Ennahda Tunis, which has been the party ruling Tunisia for the past 5 years, the party of Hussein Shahid for the past 3 years. Now, let me finish. And to say that Ennahda has been ruling for the past 5 years, Ennahda had only one minister in 2015, and then 2 ministers since 2016. So if any party is to blame for the current situation, it is your party, the party of Ennahda Tunis and the party of Tahya Tunis. Certainly not Ennahda. So please don't try to...
Well, certainly the blame game and the finger pointing is not going to help, not only on this show, but more importantly, for the grim situation that Tunisia finds itself in socially and economically, Mohamed. How do you get out of this mess? How do you get out of this situation and this deep distrust amongst the Tunisian people for the political system and their politicians?
Well, it's like we just saw right now between representatives of two parties arguing and in an accusatory way, each other's party accusing the other of being responsible. So first of all, we need to identify what are the policies, not the individuals who made mistakes. What are the policies that went wrong? And how were these policies designed? The reason why nothing changed, or almost nothing changed at the economic level since 2011, because we kept adopting the same neoliberal orientation that Ben Ali adopted during his last years, and that led to the revolution. The political instability and the social unrest that we've been seeing since 2011 is due to the same cause. The continuous decrease of the value of the Tunisian dinar is caused by the policies that were adopted by all the government, including Ennahda, Nida, Tunis, and others. So the problem here is not with who is ruling. The problem is what are the policies that parties are discussing. And until today, we've seen that all political parties are adopting the same line, backed by World Bank and the IMF in the same way that Ben Ali was developing his policies under technical assistance of people who are not necessarily very familiar with the complexity of the Tunisian economy. So as long as we will continue to play chess politics between elite and ignoring the state-society relations and trying to find out a solution that really works for Tunisian people, we won't be able to improve neither the economic situation nor the political situation.
Right. Focus on the much-needed policies. Implement those rather than inner-party fightings. Radwan, Tunisia seemed internationally, at least, like a success story in 2011. It was where the Arab Spring began, and it seemed to be the first country to really make the successful transition into democracy. If we're looking at the situation these days in 2020, is it fair to say that not much really has changed?
No, I don't think it's fair to say that. I think what's fair to say is that Tunisia has made a lot of progress on the democratic front. We have a lot of freedoms now that we never had before. We have succeeded in combating terrorism and extremism. We have security in the country now like we never did before, while maintaining our freedoms and our democracy, which was a big challenge. We have succeeded, for example, in fighting the coronavirus. We have almost 0 cases now of the virus in Tunisia, except few cases coming from overseas, from outside Tunisia. So we are making progress, but there are still many challenges. And in my book, and I have been working on democratic transitions for the last 20 years or 25 years, democratic transitions take long time. They are not easy. It is not fair to say that, oh, it's been 10 years, why haven't we succeeded yet? There is not a single country that has done fully completed the democratic transition in less than 20 or 25 years. It takes time to build democratic institutions and to fight corruption and to build strong political parties with a vision. I agree with Mohammed. We need visions and political vision and economic vision. But who is going to develop that? It is only political parties that can develop political and economic vision for the future. And right now, unfortunately, we don't have those.
It takes time. Ahmed, what would your recipe be? How is Tunisia going to overcome this political instability and deadlock?
We need to reform the electoral system. We need to give the president much more power. Because there has always been a balance up to now between the powers that the parliament has and what the president has to say or has to do. And we need to have someone who has a vision, vision that's gonna work for the next 10 or 15 years with political stability. But let me tell you something. For once, I agree with Mr. Radwan, but not exactly, because what we gained from this, what we gained so far, is the political culture that Tunisians are starting to acquire. Tunisians are more and more critical towards their own parties. This is very good for this young democracy. This is excellent. And you know what? In Tunisia, I figured out that eventually there is two main trends. There is the secular one and the Islamist one. And I'm very happy, actually, that the PDL is gaining power again, so we can have a new balance of powers.
Well, certainly it's a story that we here on Newsmakers will continue to watch as it unfolds. For now, Radwan, Ahmed and Mohamed, thank you so much for joining us and shedding light on the political turmoil in Tunisia. Well, this wraps up another edition of Newsmakers. Thanks to you out there for watching, and hope to see you again next time for a new edition of Newsmakers.